Many people visiting museums and galleries wish they could delve deeper into the meaning of artworks. Well, a very useful technique that helps develop a more discerning eye for art is to learn how to read visual metaphors. Metaphors are powerful tools to help us understand the complex world around us. They are bridges between the known and the unknown. They are ways we are able to learn about something that's unfamiliar by referring to some known experience. You learned about throwing away computer files by dragging them into the trash, didn't you? Metaphors are widely used in art, so it's very important that we understand what they are, how they work, and how artists use them to convey ideas or content. A simple definition of a verbal metaphor is this: an implied comparison that does not use like or as. Here's an example. A mighty fortress is our God. God really isn't a stone building, but you might get the idea that he is strong and protective. But in art, metaphors are much more. They urge us to look beyond the literal to generate associations that tap new, different, or deeper levels of meaning. Metaphors can transform the commonplace into art. How do artists do this? Through symbols by which one object's characteristics are transferred to another. Let's see how this is done. We'll start with an interesting category of possible metaphoric imagery: food. What kind of ideas can we derive from images of food? In fact, food can be used as a metaphor for ideas. Think of how many times you've compared thinking with food. That lecture gave me food for thought. Your ideas are half-baked. The teacher had to spoon-feed them the information. They really swallowed his garbage about flying saucers. It's interesting to think that we describe how we get information into our heads like getting food into our bodies. Don't we think of learning as nourishing our mind? This is a very simple example of how metaphors develop. So how can we start to use metaphors to tap into new, different, or deeper levels of meaning? How do artists use them visually to express what they're thinking and feeling? They can begin by asking questions and looking for answers in symbols. What ideas are generated from this process? How can these ideas be expressed symbolically? Can the idea be related to food, animals, plants, a cultural artifact, a piece of clothing, a body part? Let's look at some artworks that use two such categories of metaphors and try to discern their underlying meanings. We'll begin with this image, one of Mexico's most important religious icons. Known as the Queen of America, the Virgin Mary first appeared in 1531 in Mexico, 10 years after the conquest of the Aztecs by the Spanish. The Virgin Mary left her image on the mantle of an Indian named Juan Diego. This miraculous garment is the one that still hangs in the Basilica of Guadalupe as a pilgrimage object. It has been reproduced again and again, gaining in power as a religious symbol. Each time we see her cloaked by a garment with a golden hem, surrounded by light, an angel and clouds indicating heaven. Now look at this painting by Javier de la Garza, done in 1990. When you looked at it momentarily, you were surprised by the silhouette of the vision at the top that suggests the Virgin of Guadalupe, but is really a papaya. What is this all about? The papaya has a silhouette reminiscent of the Virgin Mary's cloak. It is surrounded by bright light and clouds suggesting a vision. A crown of thorns hints at penance and sacrifice. Who's having this vision? A young woman is in a praying pose with a trance-like stare. A field of cactus that hints at potential pain and bloodshed surrounds her. This painting, entitled The Appearance of the Papaya, is filled with metaphors that suggest what the real content of the piece might be. There is a suggestion of piety in the woman's pose here, yet the papaya is a fruit associated with lusciousness. Its seeds and soft center carry sexual connotations. What is the woman contemplating here? The tempting fruit, remember the Garden of Eden, is surrounded by a crown of thorns recalling Christ's suffering. The woman is surrounded by similar thorn plants, which may signify she is in a dangerous position, close to potential suffering with one wrong move. Some of you might be saying, wait a minute, how do we know this is what the artist really meant? And you're right to ask. Let's remember that an artist creates an artwork in order to express an idea to his or her audience. That's us. The work of art is only truly functioning as a form of communication when someone looks at it and derives some content or meaning from it. We are bound to view the work of art from our own perspective, experiences, backgrounds, which probably are not exactly those of the artist. Often, artists are surprised by whole new readings of their artwork by people who look at it, and that's okay. It means the artwork is functioning as a means of communication between people. Now let's get more practice with metaphors by looking for them in one more artwork. Another useful category of metaphors is animals. We often use animal metaphors to describe people's characteristics or behaviors. Some common animal metaphors are being catty, or bullying, horsing around, or bugging someone. Interesting animal imagery can be found in many works by the great Mexican artist Frida Kahlo. Frida's self-portrait with thorn necklace and hummingbird is a fine example of how she used animal metaphors to suggest the physical and emotional pain she endured throughout most of her life. Closer inspection of what first appears to be her necklace reveals that her jewelry is really made of intertwined thorns that are actually piercing her flesh. Thorns are Christian imagery. They recall the crown of thorns of Christ's suffering. Many of Frida's self-portraits express her chronic suffering. From the thorn necklace hangs a hummingbird. Birds generally suggest flight and transcendence. Is the bird a symbol of escape from pain? However, this bird is also a Mexican love charm. The dead hummingbird may be symbolizing lost love. In 1940, when she painted this work, Frida had divorced her unfaithful husband, Diego Rivera. Butterflies above her head are more symbols of transcendence and change. They begin life as caterpillars and completely transform themselves from caterpillars while in their cocoons. For the pre-Columbian people, butterflies symbolize dead warriors who were reborn, resurrected to live again among the gods. The monkey appears in several of Frida Kahlo's works. It has been suggested that the monkey may be a substitute for the children Kahlo was never able to bear because of severe injuries she suffered in a bus crash when she was 18. With only 2 examples of artists using metaphors, we have begun to delve deeper into the meaning of artworks. This is the beginning of developing a discerning eye for art. If you are a museum visitor, your time there will be much more rewarding if you look for metaphors. If you're an art student, your work will be much more rich and meaningful through the manipulation of metaphors. Has this lesson given you any food for thought?